So in this video, we're just going to wrap up what we've already done here in terms of getting hold of the data, and I'm also going to just talk very briefly about functions and list comprehensions. So these lines here, which basically sort out our data and put it into a new list, these can all be written using a list comprehension. So if you've done this, it's a way of combining the making of a list with a for loop. It's just a more succinct way of writing this code. It's not necessary, but I'll just mention it here in case you know of it and were wondering what kind of list comprehension you could use. So again, this time I can just straight away say, here's a list that I want created, and then in square brackets, list comprehension, I write down what criteria I want to use for creating this list, and this is just going to follow the pattern that we've already used at the top. So I'm going to ask for a line, and that line I need it to be stripped of the new line character at the end, and then I'm going to split it on the tab character, and so that's the result that I want. And then I just construct my for loop, and so that's just going to be for line in lines, which is what I've read at the top there. So this does exactly the same thing as these lines here, and it's just a shorthand way, a list comprehension, because you do this so often that Python provides a shorter way of going through the data and doing something with it and constructing a list. So if we run this, then I can come up here and now have a look at end data to make sure that's what it looks like. I also have S data, so we can even do things like actually work out whether S data is exactly the equivalent of N data, and yet those two are exactly the same, so you can see that here. So these lines do exactly the same as this line. So to finish off, I'm just going to put this into a function, so this function is basically, I'm going to call it so all it is going to do is it's going to get data from a file and return a list, a 2D list. If you know what 2D means, that's fine, otherwise it's going to return a list of a list. So let's give this a meaningful name. I'll call it get data. It doesn't take anything in at this moment in time, and so all of this stuff I'm just going to indent to be part of this function. And so this function is going to return the data that I need. So I'm just going to remove this here. I don't need it because I'm doing the same thing with my list comprehension. So what I'll do is I'll just say my last line is going to be return of this function, return end data. So all this function does is it opens the file, reads the lines that are there, and then puts the data into a format which I can then process, and then it returns that data. So outside of the function, if I run this now, it should work, there shouldn't be any errors, but I won't have access to any of the variables. So if I just restart the shell and then just run it, so I will not now be able to just type in end data because it's inside the function, so I can't get hold of it. But I can do something like this. So just the data I'm going to be working with, I can just say something like call the function and assign whatever the function gives me, which is going to be a workable list, to this thing called data. That's all it's doing. So now when I type in data here, I just get my list. So it's just a way of tidying up the program really, so that a function does one thing and it does it really well, and all this is doing is giving us the data passed in so that we can process it later on. And this is just the variable I'm going to use in my program, and we're going to tackle this. Should be very straightforward now. We're just going to work out how to do that, and then also this will be slightly more difficult, but the principle will be the same, and then we'll have a go at that. So both of these can now be tackled because our data is in a format which we can just whiz through using for loops.